by. Quite a famous album, that, the Cologne Concert with Keith Jarrett, and another choice of my guest, Rashid Lombard. Well, we meant to be talking about jazz, but you've got such a fascinating life, as we've discovered, Rashid, with your photography, with these various endeavors that you've done, and the archive you're setting up. And I really hope one day I'm interviewing you about the book that you've just published about your life and all your experiences. But what I found very interesting was just before that, when you were talking about Miles Davis, you spoke about redefining jazz. And one of the things that fascinated me since I've been at Fine Music Radio is the definition of jazz. And it's actually quite difficult trying to get someone to define it. And I think what you are saying is that it is becoming less and less possible to define jazz. Am I on the right track?
Yes, I think it's more about listening
Mm-hmm.
and appreciating and taking what appeals to you.
Yes.
Otherwise, I don't think there's really a definition. I mean, a lot of great musicians have their own definitions, which is makes a lot of sense. But today I'm still amazed at how many different voices come through the jazz scene, in particular in South Africa, and our music has this depth. Thanks to all the musicians, it's from the craziest to the most traditional, and many individuals stand out. Not only the big names. If you look at the new generation, I mean, they're phenomenal. Carl Shepard, wow,
Mm-hmm. And FMR Prize winner, by the way.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Bokani Daya, I mean, they're just doing some beautiful
Mm-hmm.
new stuff, and which is appealing. These guys are touring all the time.
Yeah.
The young jazz pianist Tandy Mtuli, she's in Switzerland right now. So I think there's a redefinition about jazz, and we mustn't get caught up in. It's not about a debate; it's about appreciation of music.
It's very refreshing to hear you say that. You can imagine that one of the problems we have here is people trying to describe what jazz is, and what you're saying is that don't try and compartmentalize it. Appreciate music. Okay, we're not talking about pop music necessarily, R&B, but jazz seems to me to have a very, very broad spectrum that also we here at FMR must exhibit.
Yep.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, if you talk like a musician like Carlo Mombelli, he's quite senior and spent a lot of time with in Germany, and played with a saxophonist called Charlie Mariano. It's one of my favorite. He's performing now with all these young artists. Arendse, the guitarist from Cape Town, phenomenal. When I listen to him, I think John McLaughlin, I think El Miola. It's gone beyond the smooth. And it's refreshing.
Mm-hmm. And is there a fair amount of young people who come to the jazz festival? Is jazz interesting for young people?
Well, I think this is what's happening. That your audience is becoming younger.
Which is a good thing, isn't it?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It increases the whole cross-section.
Yeah. And it's about audience development, very critical. So, in terms of playing new kind of sounds to younger people, don't underestimate them, I know lots of programmers think, it must be more swinging, more smooth, more so Benson-like, or it doesn't work like that any longer.
Mm-hmm.
University of Cape Town, you look at the students coming out of there, phenomenal.
It's a good department, that, isn't it? The jazz section at the
Absolutely,
university.
Yeah. Under Mike Campbell, but he's retired now. But I mean, he's left such a legacy. And in fact, I used them a lot. George Benson, I said, play 2 nights, one night with the orchestra. He says, okay, I'll send you the scores. Mike, I need an orchestra. George Benson came in and he said 2-3 hours. Half an hour we listened to them, said, spot on. Because they had the scores.
Yeah.
Same with Deodata. I need a string section and a horn section, and so we're producing. And there's a lot of institutions in Durban, in Pretoria universities, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's also critical is that these young musicians understand the business. You can't fool them. They understand contracts, they understand music rights, and
all of which is important, isn't it? Especially in this day and age.
And it's fitting into the creative economy now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very critical. It's no more hustling. you know, can't play for the door, or we want to make you famous. No. You know, and I think out of all the history we've been living, this is the fruits.
Gosh, you say that nice and proudly. So you're obviously a man who's proud, A, of what you've done by introducing international jazz here, and also this business of it being redefined, of younger people starting. You can sit back in your retirement, as you call it, although it doesn't sound to me as though you've retired, and enjoy the fruits of what sounds like a fascinating life.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm got into cooking.
Oh, really?
Yes,
That's
I'm always looking for
different.
new recipes besides my mother's recipes. It's my kind of therapy. But I enjoy training now. I've been doing a lot of, for better word, consulting.
Right.
You know, sharing my knowledge. So I've got clients in Nigeria, which I love. I love Lagos, Mozambique, Angola, and of course in South Africa. So I like to sit with young people that want to become a promoter or producer, and I'd like to start a training program. You know, because major events, the most important, you know, technical productions, that's all there. It's well equipped. It's the management. People you don't see. People understanding time management, your financial people. That is a backbone.
Yeah.
So I'm
And it
trying.
has to be, doesn't it? Really?
Yes,
It has
yes,
to be
yes.
these days.
It's a business.
It's a business.
We're
Absolutely.
running. It's not rock and roll.
Well, yes, it's not rock and roll. Rashid,
But
thank
I'm
you.
a rock and roller.
Are you really? Are you still a rock and roller? But jazz is your first love.
Well, actually, I mean, of late now, I've been putting Freddie Mercury on. I just love him.
Goodness me, this is quite a confession.
You know,
From
and
Russia.
Tina Turner. So, you know, YouTube, I can just put it on during the daytime.
Yes.
And so my mind is very open to music. You know,
Which is the best way
I'm
to
so
be.
old-fashioned.
This is the best way to be. Rashid, thank you. But what is your last piece of music?
Well, I'd like to. It can only be Robbie Jansen. You know, he was very important during when he had the band Sons of Table Mountain, and he had a very distinctive sax sound. And I know a lot of people are inspired by his work and his music. So his music still become standards now. You know, and I use standards rather than covers.
Yeah.
You know, covers is something else. Standards is respecting someone's music. So play the damn thing well.
Exactly.
And the song that comes to mind is How I Love to Feel Free, because that song really talks about, it's not just freedom of, it's the freedom of the mind, and it's quite a sort of a jolt.
A nice way to end our chat to you. Rashid, has been lovely and inspiring talking to you. Thank you. And don't forget, this Jazz Festival is on from the 27th of March. It's that weekend, the 27th of March. And all the details are available on the website. And I've been talking to Rashid Lombard. Thanks, Rashid.
Thank
and
you
all
very
the
much
best.
for having me.